It's the week of Chusuk, one of the biggest holidays in Korea. Members of extended family would gather up, and many households would offer a traditional memorial ritual called 제사 to their dead family members. And that brings me to the last of the mini three-part series that takes a look at Koreans' complex relationship to their dead family members. Today's story is rather long, enough to make up a whole episode, and it features not only the dead grandparents coming to the rescue of their descendant, but also shamanism, haunted house, and above all, dreams with significant implications. Most of them I have already touched in previous episodes. I'll put the links to the relevant episodes in the description, but I am yet to explain the concept of selling and buying dreams. I already mentioned in one of the previous episodes how Koreans would traditionally believe dreams could signify something important, so much so that there are a whole perceived lexicon of symbolisms in dreams, of which objects or situation could tell what might come in the future in the form of fortune or misfortune. When one has a supposed significant dream, other person could buy the dream or with its potential implications off of the dreamer. There's no such a thing as a fixed price, as what matters is the dreamer and the buyer mutually agree upon the deal. I don't know if this concept exists in other cultures too, but it is a well-known practice in Korea, regardless if one believes it or not. So, here's one whimsical yet allegedly true story about a girl who naively buys off a nightmare from her friend, which leads her to a serious problem but gets rescued by her dead grandfather. It sounds like a lot already, isn't it? Let's get right on. As always, handpicked, translated and narrated by your host, Anthony. Last July, I caught up with a friend I hadn't seen a while. She turned up looking very tired. She seemed not to want to talk about it, but as I asked her repeatedly what was going on, she finally explained it was because of nightmares. Apparently, a creepy man with white face would chase her around in a dream every single night. She would be running away from him around the town, and the next time the dream would start at the same spot where the previous night's dream ended. I knew the friend gets easily scared and assumed her fragile character should be the reason of the nightmares. I, being my usual nosy self, suggested that I should buy her dream, as I was a fearless, brave girl. God, my nosy arrogance was to be my downfall, I must admit. The friend seemed tempted. "You think? If only that'd be possible," she said. I asked what she thought be the cause of the dreams, but she was reluctant to come clean. I wasn't taking it anyway serious and was only trying to psychologically unburden her, so I just let it slip. I owed a bit of something to her anyway, and I suggested that I'd buy her dream for 5,000 won, about $4-5. My debt to her was more than 5,000, so it would be a win-win deal. She quietly said before we shook hands on the deal, "By this deal, I might be indebted for your life." Which was an odd comment, but I just thought it was her tired mind talking. I came back home late and went to bed as normal. Above my bed head is a big window. As usual in the summertime, I kept it opened as I went to bed. And right from that night, I had the odd dream. In the dream, I was playing a game on my phone. Suddenly I felt chills on my head. I looked up the window behind, and there was a pale white face floating around. It seemed a man, and he was looking at me. I have spectacular useless dreams a lot, so there I assumed it must be just one of them. So I ignored the guy and carried on playing the game. Guess I could be so indifferent because I knew it was a dream. problem was the same dream recurred every night for a week. I could not but conclude that buying my friend's dream was, after all, a serious deal. The situation in the dream changed a bit into August. Everything was the same, me playing the game inside and the pale man looking from outside the window, except he started to demand to open the door. "Open the door! Open the freaking door right now!" I felt a bit scared at his scratchy voice, but didn't want to show it to him either. So I shouted back, "Use your own hand, dumbass!" The man then started banging his head on the insect net on the window and went wild with swearing that he'd kill me, etc. Now I found it more irritating than scary. I huffed and talked right back, Yeah, bang your head off all day long. I won't open it for you." While all this was going on every night, I got a call from another friend from whom I hadn't heard a while, quite out of blue. "Hey, how are you? Are you alright? Nothing's wrong?" she asked. I said I was fine and what was up. She explained she had an ominous dream and got worried about me. In the dream, she was walking along a road with colonnades of trees on each side. It was dark with no street lamps, but a light was seen afar at the end of the road. She sensed that was her destination and carried on walking until she realized she was holding something in her hand. She looked down and found the single white blossom of chrysanthemum, the funeral flower. She thought she was going to a funeral then. At the end of the road, by the single street lamp, was a house. No light was on in the house, which made my friend wonder, because our household during funeral would keep all the lights on and doors opened at all times for the guests. She felt sudden chill and saw someone standing under the street lamp. She creeped at first because it seemed like just a head was floating around, but soon realized that was because he was clad in a black cloak from neck down to the ground. The man pointed towards the house and said to her, "Your friend's there. Wake and bring her out here." He didn't mention the name, but my face came to her mind. She asked the guy who he was to ask for me. He said, "She's dying today. I'm going to kill her." Suddenly feeling something stick in her hand, the friend looked down her hand again and found the chrysanthemum now dripping of red blood. She tried to deflect the situation by saying that I might not be in. She wouldn't want to bother my family if that's the case. But the man was firm. "No, she's in. I watch on her every night." The friend was terrified now while the man was keep pushing and demanding. Just then, a jingle of a bell was heard from the road, and a figure appeared from the darkness. It was the friend's grandmother who passed away a few years ago. Neatly dressed in her hanbok, the traditional dress, but with a stern expression on her face, the grandma went up to the man and started to scold him with a roaring voice. The man was adamant and kept saying, "I'm here to break the girl's neck today." Then there was a loud footstep coming from the other end of the road. A man in a military uniform. My friend recognized him to be my father and told him that this strange guy was trying to harm his daughter. The man in uniform then took his rifle and shot at the man in black. He fell, but never failing to look at the shooter with a fury and screamed, "I'm going to kill and break anybody who invades my place." Friend's grandma then tried to persuade him that I wasn't at fault, that it was a different girl who trespassed his place. The man in black then disappeared, leaving a strange shriek. Grandma then told a friend that she would guide her back where she was from, and Grandma and the man in uniform exchanged bows politely. And that was when my friend woke up from the dream. I was pretty creeped out with her dream. That friend never visited my place and couldn't have known that my family home was sitting next to a sole street lamp at the end of otherwise totally unlit road with colonnades of trees on each side. And she saw exactly that in a dream. As for the man in the military uniform, I figured it must have been my grandfather who died in action during Korean War. I only know him from old photos, but his close resemblance to my father was uncanny. And of course my friend never saw the photo of Grandpa and thought him as my father. I asked her to describe the man in black as much as she could, and indeed it seemed to match the guy I'd seen in my dream for the past 1 week. But she added something I hadn't recognized, that the guy seemed limbless under the black cloak. If that should be true, well, he indeed could not open the door with his own hands. Things seemed calming down a bit afterwards. I'd been meanwhile trying to contact a friend who sold me her dream. Let's call her friend 1 to avoid confusion, because even I could now see there was something serious behind it all. But she was clearly avoiding me. So you can imagine I couldn't believe it when one early morning I was woken up by her call. "Hello?" I said. Silence. I tentatively asked, "Are you all right?" Friend 1 started crying on the other end of the line. I prepared myself for the worst of the news and asked what was wrong. Her response was, "I'm sorry." I'm basically easygoing, and even after all the incidents with the dreams, I hadn't felt begrudged against her because I didn't perceive it really a life-threatening event. I even felt pity to hear her apologizing with tears. What triggered me was she still would not tell me what was it all about. She insisted that she was calling to apologize, not to explain. WTF. Calling me up 6 in the morning and alarming me with all the crying, only to leave me still in the dark. In the end, I hung up first, in exasperation. Now all worked up, I called up the friend who had a dream about me. Let's call her friend 2 to avoid confusion. Friend 2 knew friend 1's older sister well, and she offered to call her sister if she could tell what had been going on. And when friend 2 called me back later in the day with the full story, well, that was a revelation, and a terrifying one at that too. So, friend 1 went to a trip with a few college mates. Everything seemed fine. She came back home very cheery and was unusually chatty about what a lot of fun the trip was. The sisters were not particularly close, and the sister simply thought, well, good for her. She found something was weird only at night. The sisters shared the room, and by the time the sister came to bed, friend 1 was already asleep. Sister settled herself in bed and was about to fall asleep when she heard friend 1 saying, "Who are you?" She rarely talked in sleep, but now she repeated, "Who are you?" time after time. A bit irritated for her sleep being disturbed, the sister whispered in friend 1's ear for fun, "I'm your sister." But friend 1, still deeply asleep, went, "Why are you my sister? You're not my sister. Who are you? What are you?" For the following few days, the sister noticed friend 1 clearly having trouble in sleep and looking increasingly down and tired during the day. But she would simply put it down to some nightmare. But then, several days later, friend 1 seemed all happy and slept sound again. I believe that was after I bought the dream off of her. Her sister again simply thought, good for her. That didn't last long though. One day the sister went to bed and found friend 1 asleep in her bed, but with a tortured face. The sister assumed that she was having another bad dream and went to bed herself, only to be woken up by noises friend 1 making. She was struggling and fighting with her whole body, flinging her arms and legs about. Before the sister could react, friend 1 fell from the bed, but even the hard fall wouldn't wake her up. Still asleep, she crawled up to the terrace door and begged, "Please don't kill me! Let me live! Let me live!" Sister got so terrified watching all this, and she screamed for their parents. Friend 1 still would not wake up from her dream even when her father picked her up and shook her round, and carried on begging desperately, "I'm sorry, don't kill me, I don't want to die," until she fainted. An ambulance was called by the appalled parents, but doctors didn't find anything medically wrong with friend 1. Next day, the whole family got together and interrogated friend 1 about what was going on. Friend 1 was reluctant and only started talking after her mother pushed her hard. So she and 3 mates went on a trip together. Nothing unusual had happened except for their visit to an abandoned local house one night. They drank a lot all evening long, as college kids do, and one of them came up with the idea of exploring the abandoned house. Friend 1 wouldn't have agreed usually, but alcohol outdid her usual self. She said her memory was fuzzy regarding what they'd done in the house, apart from some scenes of them messing around and overall being obnoxious drunkards. About time they came around, they found it was weirdly chilly there, despite a summer weather outside, and finally decided to live. And on the way out, friend 1 happened to break an old mirror by mistake. Otherwise nothing else happened. She came home safely and nightmares started since then. She apparently omitted the fact she sold the dream to me though. Her mother urged friend 1 to contact the other 3 mates that went there together, and found out they all had, if in lesser degrees, nightmares, sleep talks, and illusions. In the end, mothers of the kids got together and took their daughters to a shaman. The shaman gave a hard look at 4 mates and said, "So, why did you break in somebody else's house, eh?" Her eyes then stopped on friend 1 and added, "The other 3 have it easy, but you are doomed." She, her mother and sister begged the shaman to try and find a way for them. The shaman then asked friend 1 in low voice, "You are still hiding something, aren't you?" Now her desperate mother slapped friend 1 on the back and commanded she should come out clean if she'd live. But she kept denying, until the shaman spoke for her. "You think I wouldn't know? You sold off an innocent friend of yours, didn't you?" Shaman added with a stern voice, "Keep lying, and you shall never win a sympathy from the white-faced guy looking down on you now." Only then friend 1 broke down and told how she sold her dream to me and had been avoiding my contacts in fear. The shaman huffed and said, "You've got some friend. What kind of dummy buys a nightmare? Had it not for her dead ancestors' protection, she would have been dead already with such a dumb feat." Then she lectured on to the girls that it wasn't just in the known haunted places that such disaster ensued. Any old abandoned place could be occupied by a random ghost, and no good ever came out of such misadventures. What followed was a 3-day-long cleansing ritual performed by the shaman. Friend 1 survived the ordeal, but became visibly quiet and cautious, her sister said. Anyway, that was my story, and I'm happy that we are still alive and free of the nightmares. Hope you all stay away from troubles. Hi, it's Anthony here, and thank you very much for your listening. This was another episode with a single long story. I hope you enjoyed it, despite it featuring quite a few different elements. If there's anything that you found unclear or still curious about, feel free to leave me a comment. I'll do my best to explain where necessary. Also, if there's the idea of selling or buying a dream in your culture, do let me know that too. If you enjoyed my work, please give a little boost to my little channel by giving me a thumbs up, a comment, and by subscribing to my channel. As for my returning viewers, thank you. I wish you all a happy Chusuk holiday, whether you celebrate it or not. I'll come back with something else next week. Until then, take care.